And welcome back to the Boomin Buckeyes Podcast. I am your host, Cody Croy. We are joined by the new co-host of the Boomin Buckeyes Podcast. You know him as Jake Hurricane or Big Jake Cleveland on all social platforms. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Cody?
Good. Glad to be here.
Yes,
So we
sir.
got to talk about the NFL draft. It took place Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Multiple Buckeyes got picked. We had 11 Buckeyes selected in the draft, a couple more that were picked up as undrafted free agents. I just want to talk about the development at Ohio State. There's no place like it. I mean, best program in the country. You've heard the slogan developed here. What do you think? How does that hold up this year, especially?
Well, for me personally, I mean, I'm with you. I've been saying it for years. I think we develop talent better than anybody in the nation. We continue to prove that, and this year was just another stepping stone. I mean, with guys like Arvell Reese stepping up, we heard those ramblings like, "Oh, this guy could be really good," but none of us seen that. This year, he comes in as a complete game changer immediately. The progression of Sonny Styles, Carnell Tate, again, wide receiver. I'll die on that
Absolutely.
hill. And it for years, people probably seen all over X, the LSU and Ohio State hate going on recently.
Oh my goodness gracious! You would not believe some of the arguments I've had to endure.
It's unbelievable. And it's not just these top guys, that we're, pumping into the draft each year. I mean, Kazmarek as well.
Yes.
A lot of talk started coming around him. I mean, he's an elite blocker. Lorenzo Styles, I feel like a lot of people didn't expect him to even be drafted if we're, going back to last year. And Caden Curry, I think a lot of the things with Caden was how short his arms were. I think he's a better player from, where he actually went at.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, that just speaks to, our staff is unbelievable, and we prove that every single year.
I think what's so impressive, even a guy like Ethan Onionwa, you want to look at where Ohio State is on the NFL draft board, how much people respect Ohio State. We had a guy that whenever he came in, he was abysmal. And then he gets drafted without even starting, without even barely getting any reps. That's super impressive in my opinion. Obviously, he had a great career at his former school, but it didn't go so well whenever he had to face better competition.
No, I completely agree with you.
I think to give him the benefit of the doubt, that also speaks to our development. But I want to talk about Arvell Reese, a guy, he only had 1 year as a starter, and then he's a top 10 selection. That's pretty unbelievable.
Like you said, it goes to the development here. He's just that tone setter at linebacker, physical downhill type of player, and he plays with just that edge that you want. And I'm really curious to see if they're gonna play him full time at edge, just because we know like they like to do those kind of things in the NFL.
Right.
I don't know if I'm going with him at edge at all times. His bend has to get better, but when you're talking about an athlete like Arvell Reese, anything can happen. So, I'm very curious to see how the Giants are going to use him.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they drafted Abdul Carter, just traded Kayvon Thibodeau, I believe. He has the speed and size of an edge, but it's just about where he's comfortable. Like you said, the bend, how that's going to benefit him at the next level. So I don't know, but no matter where he goes, an incredible player. But we got to talk about Sonny Styles, another Buckeye linebacker off the board. This speaks to the development of James Laurinaitis. In his first couple of seasons at Ohio State, he has turned this defense into a juggernaut, and specifically at the linebacker position.
Sonny, I mean, Sonny, I love Sonny, but I did not expect him to take this kind of leap. And a lot of people will probably, just talk about his insane combine, which we all knew he was an elite athlete as it was. But I seen that development, I mean,
absolutely.
A lot of the time we were looking at just he's big, athletic, he can cause a lot of issues for any team, especially at this level. But we've seen the versatility. You can line him up all over the field now, and that speaks for me. Laurinaitis came in with a vision for him and really, took advantage of that, played him in different areas, and the right system. He's making an impact immediately, and I think you'll see that in Washington.
Yeah, I think his versatility will be huge for any team. And like you said, the combine obviously shot him up the draft board, but we knew. I mean, you go look at the tape. We know how athletic he is. We know That 6'5" frame, it was like 220 something.
Yeah, I think it was like 227 maybe?
Yeah. So really big dude. But yeah, like you said, it wasn't just the combine. We know how good and how athletic he is. He's just another Buckeye that's going to excel at the NFL level.
Yeah, and like, just talking about James, like it was like you said, he was big. We knew it, he was athletic, but it was that versatility that we seen. And I feel like that, kudos to James Laurinaitis because he deserves it for, really turning these guys into something that most of us didn't necessarily see.
Absolutely. And another guy that has really developed his position well is Keenan Bailey. I know a lot of fans were frustrated with him last year because of the offensive game plan and his involvement with all the tight ends. But you got to look to his development. Will Kacmarek, he recruited Joe Royer at Ohio State, and he coached him for the first couple of years, eventually moved on to Cincinnati. And then you have Max Clare. 3 tight ends drafted. That's very rare in the NFL draft. Another guy, yet another coach that has become a place of development, another source of development at Ohio State.
Yeah, agree wholeheartedly. I mean, we knew Will coming in. I did, but I really want to speak to. It seems like that the way he is getting these guys to block. Max Clare was not seen as any kind of blocker coming from Purdue, and I mean, he turned into a solid blocker. I think that's what shot him up higher. So I was thinking of him as like maybe a day 3 guy. Fifth round, I believe it was 61st overall he went, and I think a lot of that was due to he has become a legitimate good blocker, still young, still learning, high upside, and catching the football, obviously. And I think that goes to development, as we've been talking about. I mean, we just seem Ryan Day really seems to know how to get these guys to really work well with all these positional groups.
And I think with Claire, obviously he didn't have the season receiving wise, but I think his years at Purdue, they know how good of a receiver he is. It was one season where he didn't have quite the receiving season that he had hoped. But like you said, being able to come to Ohio State and develop in all areas of your game, not just as a receiver, but like you said, he became a much better blocker. I think that will serve him well at the NFL level, even if his last year of college wasn't quite as good or as successful as we had hoped.
Oh yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And even just in just talking about receiving, I mean, Will Kacmarek didn't do a whole lot in the receiving this year at Ohio State, but I feel like when these players do end up coming over to Ohio State, these scouts know that. I mean,
Yeah, oh yeah.
like I said, a few minutes ago, it is wide receiver U over here. So when you got a big tight end coming over here, you shouldn't probably be expecting to catch the ball
Right,
70
right.
times and having 8 to 1,200 receiving yards. It's just not going to happen that way. People come here because they want to be developed into NFL prospects. And like you said, and I say as well, I think we do it at a higher level than anybody in the country.
Right. You mentioned receiver. Got to talk about Carnell Tate. Obviously, I know you're pretty crushed. Didn't fall to your Browns, didn't fall to my Browns.
Yeah.
But another receiver being picked top 5, we're going to have another one next year. That's kind of Brian Hartline's going away gift. Speaking of Cortez Hankton, do you think that he's a guy that can continue this development from his time at LSU, from his time at Georgia? The Ohio State wide receiver U mantra, I personally expect it to uphold, but who knows?
Yeah, I think, I mean, we're going to miss Hartline's development. And I know there was a lot of people, that were upset about Hankton coming in here. But, I mean, he at LSU, he was with, I think it was Kyron Lacey and those guys there, which a lot of people thought Kyron was a first round talent. I actually had him right around that early second, late first. I don't think he'll have a problem developing any of these guys. I think it was a good move. He's a player's coach. At the end of the day, until Ryan Day gives me a reason to doubt who he's hiring in, because usually it's a pretty good situation that we're in, I'm going to back him. I'm going to defend him. I think it was a good hire. I think players have already came out and said they've really enjoyed playing under him. And, I mean, at this kind of university, we knew Brian Hartline was eventually going to leave. Does it suck?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to miss him as a wide receiver coach, but at the same time, I'm not a fan of Arthur Smith, but I think Ryan Day sees something that he likes, and I think ultimately it will work because he's given me, no reason not to trust in what he's seeing.
I think with Arthur Smith, you're looking at his NFL experience, much like Matt Patricia. He's had a lot of success at the NFL level. I know he was not a very successful head coach with the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, his Pittsburgh Steelers tenure didn't go quite as as a lot of fans had hoped, but he was very successful with the Titans. And I think that he's a guy. He's already spoke on it. He's just a football guy, and I think a lot of what he can do. He said it in his press conferences, there's going to be schemes that, again, much like Matt Patricia, these college football teams just aren't going to recognize because it's going to be NFL style schemes. And I don't think you're asking Arthur Smith to change your offense. At the end of the day, it is Ryan Day's offense with the use of multiple tight ends, but that's Arthur Smith's bread and butter. I think all you're asking him to do is install his own version that he's had success with. And I think if you can do that, you're going to see Ohio State's offense that they want to run. I think you'll see it come to form.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, last year, obviously, it was a little slower paced than most of us are accustomed
Right.
to. And I think, it'll be a slower paced offense this year. But like you said, some of these schemes, like we've seen it with Patricia, these college teams just don't pick up on these things.
Right.
Like we say, Patricia, a lot of people hated that hire. I didn't hate it. I didn't know how to feel about it. At times he looked good in the NFL.
Right.
Obviously, coaching gig didn't go right. But
No, not at all.
at Ohio State, it seems like we got players in here that can learn those kind of schemes.
Right.
So I'm excited about the hire. Like I said, it wasn't my first choice, but just going off of what we seen Patricia do last year, it's hard not to back it.
You mentioned the slow offense. In my opinion, I think it is super important that Ohio State, they need to up the pace this year because of the hard schedule. There's hardly any breathing room. You go and play, I believe it's Kent State like week 2, and then you go to Texas. So you're going to have to up the pace. You have an incredibly difficult schedule this year. There's going to be no breathing room to run the same slow version of that offense that you were running last year.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think the tempo will be better. I just don't expect, I feel like a lot of us look back, or I shouldn't say us, I should say just fans in general are looking back at like that Urban Meyer style. That's gone. But
Oh,
we're
yeah,
not
absolutely.
run that kind of pace, but you see people talking about it all the time. Last year, we seen a significant different pace, though, even from like a Ryan Day led offense. And I do think that will be better, but I'm still not thinking we're going to go back to like that traditional Ryan Day style, quick, no huddle. I think you'll see times of no huddle again because I think
Right.
they do realize that, we can't move as slow, especially with the talent. There's too much talent on this offense to take your time that way. And I think
Right.
ultimately that's what
Absolutely.
got us. Like in the playoffs, I think just you started to see it at the end of the year, like with Julian. It just seemed like things were off with him. The pressure started to build. It just didn't seem like he had confidence moving into that game. And I think if he would have continued to up that tempo throughout the year, I think he would have developed a lot better in those kind of situations. But I do expect him to do that this year, and I think Arthur Smith will get him right.
Ryan Day, he mentioned, I think it was after the Texas game, that we hadn't seen, he didn't have the offense at 100%. He said, okay, now it's time to go. It didn't feel like we ever actually reached that 100%. And I just got to ask, like, what were they waiting on? And you can't have that this year. It's going to be, it's unacceptable
Yeah,
to
that's
not go full go every time.
that's something that I wrestled with a lot last year because I do remember that quote. And a lot of people I discussed football with that were like, we're still waiting on that. I was like, give it time. It's building. And then it just like never happened. And I was like, well, I don't really know what happened, to be completely honest with you. But I think Ryan Day's a smart guy. I think he knows that.
Mm-hmm.
So this year, I mean, I guess you just kind of have to let it play out. But I would expect they definitely, especially with the talent still in that offense, you got to push the ball a lot more this year.
I think talking about the NFL, it's so valuable to have these coaches, even if you don't always trust them. Having these coaches that can tell these guys, like, okay, this is how the NFL draft process is going to go. This is how the NFL works. I think that allows guys to want to come here. And I think at the end of the day, they've had that experience in the NFL. So I think if you just trust these guys and let it all come together, you're going to see that success that, again, a lot of Ohio State fans are hoping for, but again, didn't really see much of that last year. especially on the offensive side of the ball.
Offensive side, yeah, I agree 100%. And like I said, I think it's just something we're gonna have to keep an eye on throughout, just going into this season. But I'd expect another year of development for Julian. He already looked a little bit bigger. I think he's put on some muscle. They said they want to move him out a lot more this year. That's going to be a key, which I always said that anyways, because he does. I think he clocked a 4.6 from my research I've done. The kid can move, and
Right.
if you add that into this offense, you're going to move quicker, So it's just one of those things, adding his legs into the mix, that I think automatically is going to give us a faster paced offense this year.
And I think that's something that Ryan Day has been hesitant to do.
I agree.
For whatever reason. I mean, C.J. Stroud, he didn't seem to run the ball, and we know he's a decent athlete. Will Howard, he ran the ball a little bit. Fields, he ran the ball quite a bit. But it seems like overall, Ryan Day is not somebody that lets his quarterbacks go. I think that you're going to have to see that this year, and it's going to have to be something that does change as he evolves as a coach.
Yeah, and then that was the thing that drove me crazy with C.J. Stroud when he was in Columbus, man, because I knew it wasn't his first play like a 60-yard run.
Yeah, it was something ridiculous.
It was like a 60-yard touchdown run. Like, the guy is an athlete. Is he run a 4.4? No, but I mean, he was in that 4.6, 4.7 range, and that's good enough to move it at the college level. So, yeah, and there was just times, man, where he would have wide open lanes, and I was like, this has to be something to do with coaching, because there is no way.
You'd think so. I mean, to me, that's how I interpret it, because again, we've had multiple offensive coordinators, we've had multiple offensive assistants, but one thing that has remained the same under Ryan Day is our quarterbacks that we know are capable of running. They just don't seem to do it. So if you're really going to have your offense take a step forward, you got to maximize all your players' talents.
And I agree with that, and I will say, I unless I'm wrong on this, but I don't really remember Ryan Day coming into a season like saying we're going to use this guy's legs.
And
so that's giving me hope, that he said it this time, because I'm like, okay, we need to speed this offense up. That's going to give us another dimension to really open it up and go fast. And, Smith has been around for a long time. He's done it at a high level. So we've seen it, like I said, Matt Patricia last year. A lot of people hated that hire, and it was the best move we've made in a very long time.
I remember a certain fan base clowning us because they're Detroit Lions fans, clowning us, not realizing, like, hey, a head coach and a defensive coordinator, completely different ball game.
Might work out at the college level, especially when you're at the Ohio State University.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I want to talk about just some of the guys that were taken off the board. Out of all these teams that these guys went to, Caleb Downs to the Dallas Cowboys, Sonny Styles to the Washington Commanders, Caden McDonald to the Houston Texans, which fit do you see these guys having the best success in, and which rookie Buckeye do you think will have the best season?
So for me, he was my best player available. It's Caleb Downs. I'm going to stick with that. I think it's just his instincts, man. I don't think people realized last year just how good he was controlling that secondary. He processes everything so fast. He's constantly talking. The versatility that, he's going to bring to that defense that's already has struggled, but they really, made that a focus to improve. You can line him up anywhere and he's going to be consistent. You combine that with his physical tools, and you're just looking at someone that's going to come in and quickly become one of the best safeties in the NFL. I truly believe that. I think by the end of next year, you're talking about this guy as a top 15, top 20 player coming in to, the season after. I think he's that good. And I think, with their focus on fixing that defense, he's going to be looked at as like, the main contributor and reason that defense took that step forward. And that's another reason, like with the Browns, I wasn't mad at Fano at 9, but when he was sitting there, man, we traded back. I was like, he's that good. We're missing the nickel. He's not going to play nickel, but the way he communicates, he just sees everything before it's happened. And I think you're just going to see a higher level of who he was at Ohio State in the NFL.
And I'm going to have to agree. I think Caleb Downs, he's the defensive quarterback, a guy that players have called Coach Downs. Obviously, his father, he has experience in coaching. Gary Downs, his brother plays in the NFL for the Indianapolis Colts. So it's in his blood, it's in his DNA. But I want to go to the opposite side of the spectrum, because there's a couple Buckeyes that I could see maybe struggling in their first year. And I'm going to go first on this one. I think whenever you look at the Giants, their development of pass rushers, of guys on the defensive side of the ball, whether it be former first-round pick Kayvon Thibodeau or Abdul Carter, who didn't have a very good rookie season. I think Arvell Reese, he might struggle his first season. And then I think Sonny Styles, he's a guy that he's going to have go through some growing pains at the NFL level because, again, he's 6'5". He's the size of a defensive end. He was recruited as a safety, and he played linebacker. So I think at the NFL level, he didn't have that much time to develop in college. So maybe it'll take him a couple of seasons to get worked in, to develop. But those are guys that, again, I'm just a bit concerned about going into year one.
Yeah, and the Arvell one, I definitely agree because, like I said at the beginning of the segment here, I just worry that they're going to try to put him at edge and make him stick. And
Right.
the Ben's got to be better, man, at the next level. Like he's a tone setter at linebacker. He is a linebacker, and if you try to now, if you want to work with him and get him to that point, I completely understand that. I think he is a good enough athlete to make that happen. It's just, rookie year, you can't come in there and just have him sit at the edge.
Right.
A lot of people will be screaming bust if that does happen.
Well, and I feel like with Reese, especially as a rookie, it's going to be especially difficult because he's already a bit undersized for an edge as it is. I mean, you look at guys like Myles Garrett that are 6'5 plus, 260, 270 pounds. These guys are gigantic. Arvell Reese, he's the size of a true linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
This has been the Boomin Buckeyes podcast. Obviously, bringing in some new talent. Jake Samulak, my new co-host. Go give him a follow on all socials at Big Jake Clee. You can find me on all social media at Boomin Buckeyes. You can find this podcast at Boomin Buckeyes Podcast, both on Instagram and Spotify.